To me, COVID-19 gives me the description of a pestilence in the scriptures. If I'm to look at it from a Bible context, it gives me the description. It strikes me like a pestilence because as we are talking right now, it's a lot of things are still not very clear about the origin, about the treatment, and also about how majorly how you're supposed to be able to deal with the curative bit of COVID-19. So pestilences, mostly in the Bible, were regarded like plagues, which came upon a people, and it only took the intervention of God for them to be able to be lifted from the land. So COVID-19 for me comes into me like a plague when I look at the scriptures. I have had people say that church is not a building. But at the same time, the truth is this: church is not an individual. Church is basically, from the original word, is called ecclesia, which means that the called out believers who are called out into fellowship with God. And if you look at the definition of church, you realize that it's a body of believers. And so if it is going to be a body, the corporate worship is important. I believe that aspect of corporate worship is important. And as it were, if you like, traditional church. So what has come as a result of COVID-19, we have been forced into something I'll call a transition. We are a church in transition because we are now sailing waters which we never imagined at any point that we could be dealing with something like this. So for me, I think a lot has changed. Number one, how we view church and the approaches approaches of ministry. Because right now, if you do church traditionally, then you will not be able to minister to the people because there is no gathering. And so we are left to open spaces which are very few, especially the online or the virtual church, if you will. Majorly, that is the major avenue that we are left with because we are not congregating, we are not allowing crowds and all that stuff. And so basically, the church has been forced to go back to the drawing board to begin rethinking again which are the best ways of reaching out to the people. Because again, we cannot say church stopped. That would be incorrect. Because church is not necessarily the preaching and the teaching. It's not entirely church. Church is about fellowship. And so if we are able to still reach to the people and have a conversation about God and about his purpose concerning us, and I thank God because the virtual window has given us an opportunity, especially as pastors, to still be able to minister and also reach out to the people, though of course it's not at the level of the physical gathering that we are used to. But I mean, the change is here, and sometimes you can't fight change. Even if we get into the post-COVID era, there are particular things which we have learned in this transition which are so important. Because like where we are right now, even if you're thinking about business, even if you're thinking about the corporate circle, and even the church setting, you realize that you cannot do traditional stuff and still be able to minister to the present generation where we are. You're now dealing with a wider audience. It's not just the church. It's not just the church, the location as it were. You're dealing with a wider scope of people. That means that even your reach must be broad in terms of your content, in terms of how you're processing your message, in terms of the language. Because right now there are people you're speaking to in Philippines who may not understand the message if it is confined to the local setting where you're speaking from. So everybody has to understand. COVID-19 has brought us to a place where we have to think globally. Our approach must be global. We can't confine our reach to the location where we are. I think for me that's the greatest lesson, that I cannot confine my reach, my vision, my assignment to the location where I am. I have to think beyond my local placement. I have to think beyond that because that's what it has taught us. Well, if you go through the Bible, James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift is from above, from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variableness or shadow of turning. And the truth is this: God does not necessarily initiate evil, and wicked stuff don't come from God. But the truth is this: God uses opportunities like this. God uses stuff like this. Like in the early church, the Bible says in Acts chapter 8, persecution arose. And through the persecution that came upon the early church, the disciples were scattered, and the apostles, they were scattered. And every place where the disciples went, as a result of the persecution, they went preaching the gospel. So we cannot say persecution was from God, but God used it as a means of fulfilling the counsel of his will. So even COVID-19, I believe strongly, it is not from God. But God has used COVID-19 as an awakening thing, even for the church. I think for me, the church was too comfortable. I think the church was too laid back. I think the church was more of, church was within the four walls of the church. But right now, look at what is happening right now. Every pastor has been forced to think. Every minister has been forced to go back to the drawing board, and they're thinking outside the box. Most of the people that never imagined at any point they will be speaking, online. They'll be preaching on TV stations. Right now, pastors are thinking about TV, doing broadcasts on TV, radio, and of course, we know the online transmissions, the virtual church is gaining momentum in a greater way, and even our outreach is bigger now. So what I will say is that I believe strongly that God has used this period to awaken the church, to shock them out of their comfort zone. Yeah.